It looked like somebody was bent over and had their head in the window of the deer blind. It either heard me or smelt me, and he pulled his head out of the tent and stood straight up, and that shocked me. They don't make people that big.
The way it moved, almost as if it was gliding across the beach. I've never seen anything move like that in my life. They were screaming at each other in gibberish. It sounded like a language, and they were chuntering away back and forwards, back and forwards, back and forwards. I know what a bear looks like, and there is no way on this planet that what I saw were bears.
What are you reporting?
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Gio!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
This is Danny Dunmore, and you are listening to the one and only Sasquatch Chronicles.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you tonight. We're going to be talking to David and his son, who are from Utah, and his son ran ahead of him on a trail and ran right into one of these creatures. And David thought his son was hurt because his son screamed, and so he runs up there and he hears a creature run off. We're also going to be talking to Jordan, who comes to us from Alabama, and Jordan is a lifelong hunter. And he's had very strange encounters out there hunting, including one sighting. He doesn't hunt so much anymore. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. And if you get a chance, check out sasquatchchronicles.com. You can become a member and get additional shows. Let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome David to the show. David, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, I
really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys being here. And I know we're changing the name of your son. We'll call him Short Walker for the show. Short Walker, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
I heard about your encounter, and I really wanted to hear what you saw and what you experienced. And but David, maybe I'll start with you. Kind of, what were you guys doing? And then we'll let Short Walker take over as far as what he saw.
Okay, sure. So this summer, it will be 4 years ago, we were doing a family night hike, and this is in Utah, and we were on the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. We were going to be exiting the park. It was a full moon, and I had my smallest on my shoulders. She was 4 years old at the time, and my son was 11, and kids like to get ahead of you, and he ran at least about 50 feet in front of me, and I heard him scream, and I thought what had happened is he hurt himself. I took my little one off my shoulders and put it under my arm, and I ran with her, and I got to him, and he was screaming. Like I said, I thought he was hurt. He says, "Dad, I saw a Sasquatch," and I thought, there's no way. That's insane. And he was able to get a good look at it because it was a full moon that night. I didn't see it, but I heard it. And we've got these really small, stubby oak trees out here called scrub oaks. And it sounded like there was a bulldozer going through the trees to get away. So I definitely heard something huge going through the trees.
Yeah, let me ask you, Short Walker. So your dad's coming up to you. Prior to your dad coming up, what did you see out there?
So it was kind of like a little bit taller than my dad, and it was like a brownish color. It was really just really insane to see it. It was like nothing I've ever seen before. Like nowhere near anything like a bear.
Yeah, I hear you. And so you're coming down the trail. Is it standing off to the trail? Is that where you run into it, or was it actually?
So the trail is like a three-way, and it was kind of like on the side with the two pathways that were forking off from the trail I was running down, and it was like in the middle between those. And it was like, I guess it was walking out there, and since I came and saw it and made a really loud noise, it started running in between those, in past the shrubs, and it was just the noises that came, like it running was like insanely loud.
Yeah, they're pretty terrifying to run into. I know what you mean when you run into them, and thank God that it ran off, as opposed to turning and coming towards you.
Yeah.
It's very strange, Short Walker. A lot of times with these creatures, there's a lot of behaviors I don't understand, but you hear it all the time. Because you would think it would have heard you coming down the trail and would have moved off or got hidden somewhere, but that's not really what they do. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. So you scream and you think that's why it ran off?
I think so. I was yelling my dad's name because I didn't know what I was seeing. I like, again, nothing I've ever seen before. And I didn't know what else to do, so I just yelled for my dad.
Yeah, I think you did the right thing. Was there anything about it that kind of stood out to you? I mean, was there, and what I mean by that is, I would imagine it's a quick glimpse you're getting because it's by the time you scream and it takes off. But was there anything that kind of stood out to you, like appearance-wise, or?
I'd say its eyes. It was pretty wild because it looked directly at me and then started running, and the eyes were just, I think they were like red. It was just, the eyes were really creepy looking at.
No, they are, especially red, Yeah. Were they lit up, or was it more like a reflection? Or when I say lit up, like, were they like bulbs of light, or was it more or less kind of, you know what I mean? Like, have you ever been out there and you see a reflection from a deer's eyes and they kind of have that golden yellowish?
Oh, yeah. I'd say more reflective. It wasn't like a light bulb, but you could see that it was red, but it wasn't like lighting up.
Yeah, I would imagine, David, you'd have been terrified, man. Your son's up ahead, he's screaming. But then you actually hear it leave. I mean, you hear this thing breaking through the forest as it's getting out of there.
Yeah, I've never heard anything like that before. I mean, I've been deer hunting a couple of times, and every now and then you hear a twig or something break. They're fairly heavy, but nothing like this before. It's pretty alarming.
Yeah, it is. Short Walker, did you how did it affect you after seeing it? I mean, are you okay with going back out in the woods, or?
I'm fine with going hiking still, but that night I was just really thinking about what I saw. I couldn't really think about anything other than that. It was creepy in a way, but I was more interested in what it was than the scary aspect of it, or creepy.
Yeah, I get exactly what you mean. And a lot of people go through that. And sometimes people have nightmares, and they, after they see them, even if it's not aggressive, it affects everyone in a different way. Being a younger guy, and I say that in a nice way because me and your dad are old guys, but being a younger guy, did it kind of spark an interest for you to kind of look into it more?
Yeah, I started going on a lot more hikes a little after it. Not directly, but I started going looking with my dad because we both found an interest in it once we saw that. and me and my dad started like looking into it and finding people that were, sharing the same stories like this.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're all trying to do is find answers to what this thing is, and what is it that people are running it, what are they running into? I give you a lot of props for coming forward, because it's a weird thing to talk about, of seeing one of these things. And it's kind of like when people see aliens, or, it's kind of that, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. It's hard to come forward and say, hey, I saw this, and it takes a lot of courage, man. I commend you a lot for coming forward and not freaking out too much. It's everyone freaks out. Don't get me wrong. Everyone freaks out. But David, have you been back to that trail?
We had, in fact, we were doing we were taking a journey in the car, going on a trip, and we were listening to some of your episodes, which are great to listen to when you're driving, man. And we heard some stories about people seeing lights, and we kind of had like a hindsight kind of moment where, while we were on the aftermath, we thought that there was other people trying to leave the park way up on the ridge with flashlights. But after we've gone back there, it's like there aren't any trails there. So we both had an aha moment where we believe what we saw were orbs, lights up there, as opposed to people with flashlights. It makes a lot more sense after we went back there.
And that was after the encounter? Or
that was after?
Yeah.
That was after it that we thought about the lights that we saw during the encounter.
Yeah, those lights are a trip, man. And it's a weird coincidence that they show up. I'm still not convinced that they're directly related, but it's a very, very strange coincidence that these lights show up, when these things are around or on people's property, or, what color were the lights?
They were it was like almost like a pinkish color, and some like a yellow color, I believe. I just remember completely disregarding anything, because we thought they were just flashlights back then. But listening to your show and learning about the orbs, I thought that's got to be what it was. What was interesting though, Wes, was like I wanted confirmation on all of it, and I want to say it was like 2 weeks later, I was working a late shift, and I was listening to Coast to Coast, and it was like a Friday night. It was their open line night, and a guy calls in, says, my name's Mark. I worked at Hill Air Force Base and was on the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, and I saw a white Bigfoot. And I'm like, oh my God, that's, my mouth was wide open, because that's the exact place we were at. And I think he said it was like the late 90s that the guy was walking on the trail, but it's like, that's the same spot. And that was confirmation. And then I also wanted to find see if there's anybody local that was interested in Bigfoot. And that's how I came across Nathan Rio. And he and I went up. We've been on a couple hikes, and I saw some amazing things with him. So it all led, confirmation to what we went through.
Yeah. What kind of experiences did you have with Nathan Rio out there in Utah?
So one night the first time I met with him was about midnight, and we went on a trail around a park, found all kinds of little, what I call I won't say hobbit structures, but like something that looked like little people would go in. And then he took me to a place, we went up these railroad tracks, and we found like these boulders were like heaved and pushed up with mud, and there was an entrance in the middle, and it was nothing but a canopy of all these, almost looked like a jungle gym made out of trees. I mean, I would imagine it, or envision it being like with the orangutans or something, because the trees how they were moved and placed it was amazing. It was like a set of a Tarzan movie. This was during the summer, so there were these I think it's a Russian thorn. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's a type of plant growing up with lots of spikes on it. And something had taken all the bark off a lot of these trees and then matted it down on top of these things so they wouldn't get stuck. I mean, it was amazing. And I wish that we had some video of that to show people, but I was without a doubt 100% convinced, because of, like, I don't know how many minutes it would take to move these trees in place and to fix them like that. It was just mind blowing.
Yeah, it is. And he definitely has areas where there's stuff going on. I know he gets a lot of crap online, but Nathan goes into real areas, man. And he's a good guy. I mean, he really is a good guy. He takes too much crap online. But
yeah, I think we all do once we put our neck out there, it seems like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you guys still go out and look for these things?
It's been a while. We do go hike, and if we've found some other stuff around that area up further. There is like a shepherd's cabin. It's a couple of miles up. There was logs placed in front of this cabin, and as soon as I touched it, they fell down. Luckily I didn't get hit, but there's odd things out there like that. I'm just like, why would anybody spend the time to do this? You know, I'd love to figure out the significance of it. If it's like a trail marker, or in the last, I had a really good experience when I went to Tahoe with my wife. We had a little getaway, and I was able to get out in some woods there and found some huge like asterisk symbols, and the trees there were just massive. They completely dwarf anything we have here in Utah. But yeah, we still go now and then. I haven't been very active. I have a little YouTube channel, but we haven't been really active on that. What's your
YouTube channel?
It's just Leighton Longwalker.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. I'll have to post a link for it.
But we just, I guess I'm at that point where I know the more you get into this subject is like, the less you know, it seems like, because there's so many different rabbit trails that this topic goes on. It's really hard because I think like everybody starts out where everything's flesh and blood, and then you find out that there's other things going on or associated with these creatures, you know.
Yeah, there's definitely weird things that go on. I almost called you Skinwalker.
That's not too far from here.
So, Short Walker, what do you think that Sasquatch is? And there's no wrong answer.
I don't really know. It's kind of that's a hard question. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's a fair answer too. I mean, that's I would say if you ask most people, they would say I don't know. You know, so there's no wrong answer on it. What do you think, David? What's kind of your opinion as far as what these things are?
Well, based on my background and what I believe, I used to think, well, it was just some type of like flesh and blood kind of animal, but I kind of am on the side of this is. I'm not going to say Nephilim. That's where I went with it, but I think it's something that has been here for a long time, but something's been messing around with it because of, I've looked into the DNA studies that have been done on it, and you've got the mother, the moms, the side, one side's 100% from a human female, and then there's nothing in the genetic bank for what dad is. I'm going to answer that with the Nephilim messed with something. Is what the best answer I can give.
Yeah, it's a fair answer. It's a very fair answer. And it's like I always say, you could be right. I mean, I've heard everything as far as what these things are, and it's one of those questions to where anyone could be right. You know what I mean? There's really no wrong answer to it.
I don't remember back in high school, but there was something called was it Gregor Mendel? He was like a monk that, and in biology, your first biology class, you're in high school, you're looking at this like Punnett square that's got like a wrinkled pea, yellow pea, and then like a regular green pea. And so my thought is, I'm wondering if they're half human and half whatever, and based on that kind of genetic square, then and if they're still out there reproducing, then there should be the likelihood or probability it would be recessive. The human side, I think, would be recessive in this, but there should be a Sasquatch giving birth to just a pure human. And then, I mean, because just based on if you do a genetic square on the half and half, and I've never heard anybody really discuss that, but if anybody's out there that knows anything, I'd love to hear about it, or anybody that's into genetics on what the probability of them having a 100% human child would be, if that's even possible. But I've often wondered about that.
Yeah, it's an interesting take. I'm no geneticist, so I can't really answer that question, but it is an interesting take, on what these things are and the behavior, like Short Walker going down that trail, it could have grabbed him and been gone. But it's,
man.
Yeah, well, the thing is, a lot of times with these things, you'll find that same behavior. He goes down the trail, he screams, and it takes off. I've had hunters do the exact same thing. I've had hikers I've had fishermen do the exact same thing. And so, are they always going to be bloodthirsty killers? No. But it is kind of fascinating because that thing had to have heard you guys coming down the trail. I'm sure you weren't being quiet coming down the trail. You know what I mean?
No, not my 4-year-old. No way.
Yeah. Well, it's I appreciate you guys coming on and sharing it. Short Walker, it was probably one of the best interviews I've had in a while, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to come on, and thank you for listening to the show, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us on, Wes.
Yeah, David, thank you so much for coming on.
You bet. Thanks again.
Next up on the show, I want to welcome Jordan. Jordan, thanks for coming on the show, man. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, man, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you here. And I know you had a couple of very strange encounters out there in Alabama, and you were hunting. If you would, just kind of start from the beginning, kind of walk us into what happened and what did you see?
All right. Well, to get everything started, I never really believed in Bigfoot. I'd never seen anything. I've been in the woods my whole life, and never seen anything, never heard anything. And when Finding Bigfoot came out, me and my oldest son, that was kind of our thing to watch it every Sunday night. But still, at the same time, I just laughed at the show and kind of thought it was a joke. But not to say that Cliff or Bobo or any of those were a joke. But
I get what you mean.
The show was, kind of a joke to me. But I was hunting on some of my property, and it was a morning hunt, and I'd been sitting there. I'd been sitting there for a few hours, and I'm just scanning the woods, looking back and forth to the right, to the left, trying to be as still as possible. I scanned over to my left as far as I could see one time, and I seen my neighbor's dog, Max, sitting behind a tree. And Max is a Newfoundland. It's a big, black, hairy dog. It's pretty big. And I seen it, and I looked back straight, and I thought, why is Max in the woods? I'm trying to hunt. He's going to ruin my hunt. And so I just I looked back over again. And this time when I looked, I turned my head back straight just as quick as possible. And, it's one of those things, when you look and you see something that it's almost like you didn't want to see it, or something that you're not supposed to see, and you look away really quick. And because I thought, Max is standing there looking at me. And so I look back over again, and then I see Max sitting behind the tree again. And, if a dog's facing the opposite direction from you are, all you can see is his back, and that's what I could see was just Max sitting there on the ground, facing the opposite direction. So I looked back straight again, and I'm like, okay, maybe Max wasn't standing there looking at me. He's a dog. He can't stand up. And so I just kind of thought it was that I was stupid or whatever. And so I look I thought, well, I look around for deer again just in case, because Mac's not moving. He's not making any noise. Maybe, deer might walk out. And I look over again, and there stands Max looking at me. And this time I stopped and I looked, and it's not Max. It's my brain. Your brain will tell you what you're seeing, even though it may be, your brain just goes to whatever's familiar. And so when I first look, I'm like, at first it's, well, that's Max standing there looking at me. And then it's, no, that's not Max standing there looking at me. And, it might have been 10 seconds that I looked, and then I looked back straight again. And I'm sitting here trying to convince myself that I'm not seeing what I think I see. Like I said, I've, sit here and made fun of finding Bigfoot and all these people seeing this thing, and which I always kind of thought that there might be something there, but I didn't, it was just kind of a joke. And so I looked down, and my phone is laying on my right leg. And I thought, well, nobody's going to believe me if I say this, so I'm going to try to snap a picture of this thing. So I turned my phone up, I stood it up on my leg and faced it towards where the Bigfoot was, and set it to camera. And, I did this without moving as much as possible. I didn't want to spook it or, whatever. And when I turned it, and I could see the Bigfoot in the picture barely, and I snapped the picture. And then I laid the phone back down on my leg, and I looked at the picture, and I thought, okay, I got it in the picture. And so I sat there for a minute. I didn't want to look back over there. I just wanted to, it was almost like I just wanted it to go away, and I wanted to go back to hunting. And, I just, so I didn't look back over there. And while I'm looking down at the phone at this picture, I look up, and propped up in front of me was my 300 Win Mag. And I kind of thought to myself, I said, well, people may not even believe the picture, but I could shoot the thing, and then I've got proof. We could prove that it's real. And at that time, I'd never heard of your show or anything. Your show probably wasn't out at that time. I didn't know that the two men might show up. Or the government would have got involved and probably have shot it. But I reached and I grabbed the gun, and I'm holding it between my legs, and I look over again, and it's gone. And it's not there anymore. So I just kind of popped the gun back, and I look around a little bit, and I'm thinking, all right, well, I don't know where it went. I didn't hear anything. I didn't, see it go across in front of me or anything. So it's gone. Well, I sit there for a little while longer, and I kept looking at the picture. I kept trying to think, trying to disprove the picture myself. And I got to thinking, I'm in this buddy stand. It's 12 foot off the ground. This thing looked to be about 7 foot tall, maybe. I've got a buddy who's 6'9", 270 pounds, and this thing was, I'd say, is a little bigger than he is. And so when that kind of crossed my mind, I thought, well, if it's 7 foot tall, and people say they got arms that reach down to their knees, this thing could probably, yank me out of the stand. So when that crosses my mind, I jump up and start looking around behind me and start looking, all the way around, trying to figure out if I can see it. Because I want to know where it's at now, just in case it's trying to sneak up on me or something.
Yeah.
And I can't see it or anything, so I sit back down, and I sat there until about 10 o'clock, which is normally when I come out of the woods. And the whole time I'm sitting there just telling myself, you're stupid. You didn't see that. It's you're imagining things, because I'd never, it just wasn't something that I've been in these same woods. As far back as I can remember, 3, 4, 5 years old, running all over these woods. Never heard, never seen anything, which I wasn't looking for anything either at that time.
Did you leave at that point? I mean, so you see this thing, and you stay in the woods longer than normal. Do you end up just leaving, and does anything else happen on your way out that day, I mean?
No, nothing else ever really happened that day. I remember going back, and my buddy that lived on the same property there, our kids, his kids are quite a bit older than mine. They would play in these woods and stuff, and I went up to him, and because I was kind of hoping that I would say something to him, and he would start laughing and be like, "Yeah, man, check out this suit I bought," and I would just come down there and mess with you. That's what I was hoping for. But he, which of course, like everybody else, he was like, "Man, it's you're you didn't see nothing. You're crazy, and this and that. But I was just like, look, dude, I'm just trying to tell you because I know the kids are out here all the time, and just kind of I'm not saying that don't let the kids out. It's never bothered the kids. It never bothered me. But at the same time, if it is here, who's to say that the kids? I didn't want anything to happen to the kids, and but he just laughed it off. But he actually got on his four-wheeler, rode down through there, and he told me that after I came out, there was deer tracks on the trail that we walk in and out, and they weren't there that day when I walked out because I'd have seen them. So deer actually did come through there after I left, but and it would have been 3 or 4 hours after this thing went on about its business.
Let me ask you, Jordan. So you see this thing and you think it's a dog. Was it on all fours? And can you kind of describe what you saw? And I get completely what you mean. I mean, I can tell you a lot of people, they'll say, I saw this weird bear. But I hear that a lot from hunters. And then when they start describing it, it sounds nothing like a bear. I guess kind of. It's running on all fours, but you get the weird stories where they're like, yeah, this bear took off in a full sprint on 2 legs. And it's like, I don't think he saw a bear, but I say all that to say this. I get where you're coming from. Like, oh, there's my buddy's dog. There's my neighbor's dog, because your brain can't process really what you're looking at. But was it on all fours? And then once you realized it wasn't a dog, can you kind of describe what you saw?
At first, like I said, all I could see was, I guess maybe it was part of its leg, or either it was squatted down behind the tree. And so it looked like, the dog sitting there. And so, but that's all I could really see. It was just like a lump of fur or hair. You know what I mean? It wasn't, It didn't have any shape or any kind of figure to it. It was just a lump sitting out in the woods. And it was about 50 yards away from me. So, which isn't far, but at the same time, it's not right in front of me. But then when it stood up, the first time when I looked over there, I looked back straight as quick as I could. I really didn't even get a look at it. I just seen it, and it looked like it was 6 or 7 foot tall, and it was standing there looking at me. And so I looked away as quick as possible to try to figure out what was going on. Because I know Max can't climb a tree, but it looked like that was what maybe he was trying to do if it was Max. And which if Max would, he's a big dog. It's a Newfoundland. And if he stands up on his hind legs, he would have been about 6 foot tall. But my nephew actually thought Max was a bear one time going across the yard. But the second time or the third time I looked, whenever it was standing there and I actually got to look at it, I never seen it on all fours. But when it was standing up, it had, and as I say this, it wasn't like I was inspecting it. I was just more of like, it's like my eyes were looking straight at something, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I wasn't like looking at the eyes and the nose and the mouth, and I was just looking at the whole figure, just trying to process what I'm looking at. And the only things I can really remember is it did have big, long arms, and it had the big rounded style head. What is the conical style head? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
Where it's got the hump on top of it. It's kind of like a gorilla. It didn't look like a man. It didn't have a man's face, because that would have stood out. I know its face was like a gray color, and all the hair was white, or black, not white, sorry. All the hair was black, and the face was kind of a gray color, but I couldn't really tell the eyes, the nose, the lips, or anything like that, because I was more just looking at the whole thing standing there looking at me.
I get exactly what you mean. Yeah, trying to process the whole thing. Do you think it realized you were there, or do you think it noticed you there?
I think it knew I was there. It was, its face was pointed directly at me, and it was just kind of, it was looking dead at me, and that's one reason why I turned around so quick, because I thought, what the heck, Max is standing there.
It's terrifying to see these things, and I've said it in the past. if even if you don't have an aggressive encounter, it kind of like resets your brain, or your brain scrambles. I guess trying to, I know I'm not articulating this very well, but I almost like your brain shuts down because it can't quite process what you're looking at. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I was just froze staring at it, and it was like I didn't really look up and down it and look at its face or nothing. I was just like I was just staring at it, the whole thing.
So you leave, and but this wasn't your only experience out there, was it, Jordan?
No, I was had another experience about a 30-minute walk from that stand on a different property. I had got permission from a gentleman that lived, just right down the road. And the way the land's laid out up there, which I'll explain later, but it's like, it's in different tracts, but the tracts may only be 3 acres wide, but they may be 20, 40 acres long. And so, everybody's property is not very far from each other. And I talked to this man about hunting his land, and he gave me permission. He said that nobody had hunted it in 50 years. And so I'm thinking, hey, this may be the honey hole where all the deer keep going to during hunting season because nobody's in there hunting it. So a couple of days, and it was late. It was right before deer season started. So when I finally got him to agree to it, and so I hadn't had a lot of time on the land to really survey it or anything or find out where the deer are. So I just went in. I found a good tree that I could climb, and I put some bright eyes on it, which, do you know what bright eyes are?
No, never heard of them, no.
They're kind of like thumbtacks, and you can mesh them into the tree.
Oh, yeah. They have like an orange.
You can get orange ones, white ones, yeah. And then from, 100 yards out, you can turn your light on, they bright up, and then you know where you're going. So I found a good tree. I put some of those on it, and I, went to the house, went to go wash my stuff, get all my stuff ready for opening day. And so opening day comes, and I jump on my four-wheeler. I head down there because, like I said, it's just right around the curve from the house. I get off the four-wheeler, and it's about, let's just say, I can't remember the time, but this would have been 2013, in October of 2013. I can't remember exactly what time, but if daylight is at 6:30, then it's legal to kill a deer at 6 o'clock. So I want to be in the tree, in the stand, sitting by 4:45 or so, just to let the woods calm down from me walking through, and everything's bedded down asleep at that time. And I get off four-wheeler, I start walking, and I have a red light on my headlamp, and I kind of knew where the tree was. I didn't want to turn on my bright light, so I just kind of walked and used that red light to spot the bright eyes. And I got there, I climbed up, I get to sit down. It's about 4:45 in the morning, and I always set an alarm, like I said, if I can shoot at 6 o'clock, I'll set an alarm for 5:50, and I put my phone in my top pocket in my jacket, like right over my heart, and it's set for vibrate. And the way my stand's set up is, once I get up, I'm 30 foot up, and I get my bow and my backpack, get them set up, and then I sit down, and I can move my seat out, and I can recline to where I can take a nap. And I usually do this every time I go hunting. I'll kick back like that, and I'll sleep until that alarm goes off, and then I get woke up, and then I'm ready to hunt. I climb up 30 foot, I pull up my bow and everything, and I get everything set up, and I kick back in my chair. And as soon as I go to close my eyes, I hear footsteps, and they're like, in the wood, and this is an oak bottom, so there's tons of oak leaves everywhere. And they're about, if I'm looking straight ahead at 12 o'clock, I would say they're at 10:30, 11 o'clock. And it was just like 5 steps, and then it stopped. And I'm thinking, what in the world was that? At this time, the only thing out are predators, and so which would be bobcat or coyote, or maybe a fox, but they're rare around this part. And so, a bobcat's not going to make any noise. A coyote, they make tons of noise. And then, if it is a fox, they don't weigh a whole lot. They're not going to make that big of a noise when they're coming through the woods. And so, like I said, it only took like 5 steps, and then that was it. So I'm like, whatever, I just closed my eyes and went to go take my nap. This being the open day of the season, I didn't get a lot of sleep the night before, just from the excitement of, getting to go hunt, and then it being a new property. I was kind of excited about it. So I go to doze off again, and I hear it again, about 6-7 steps out in front of me. And this time I kind of, the way I am, I can open my eyes and I can see out in front of me, but it's still pitch black outside. I'm not going to be able to see anything, but of course you open your eyes. And so I think again, I'm like, what is this? It can't be a squirrel, because squirrels are still asleep, and even if it is, they're going to make a lot more noise than that. And especially in an oak bottom, because they're going to be digging through the leaves for acorns and stuff. And so, and I'm like, I don't know what it is. I don't care. I'm 30 foot up in the tree. Whatever it is, it ain't going to get me, So I go to doze off again. And it does it again. I just kind of still laid there. And it does this about every, 2-3 minutes while I'm sitting there trying to doze off. And I finally just told myself, hey, it's a rabbit. Sounds like a rabbit. It's doosh, doosh, doosh. Sounds like a rabbit hopping. That's got to be what it is. I don't know why a rabbit's out at this time, because, the only thing out is bobcats and coyotes, and they're after the rabbit. So I don't know why it's out here, but oh well, that's what it is. So, time passes up by, my alarm goes off, and, this being a new property, I haven't been on it a whole lot. I was really just there to watch, to see if I see deer, or maybe, hey, when the sun comes up, I may spot a tree over there where I need to go next time, or, there's a better looking place down this way. And so when the alarm goes off, I cut it off, and I just kind of stay where I'm at. I stay reclined back, I'm just going to lay here and just see what happens. And it gets about 6:15, so it's been 25 minutes since the alarm goes off. And I've been sitting there. I haven't seen anything. There's nothing, I can see, there's certain places in the woods where I can see 100 yards. Some places I can only see 50 yards, And I look around. I don't see any deer, so I decide, I've been sitting in this one position for an hour and a half. I'm going to resituate myself. My butt's starting to go numb. The way I'm reclined back, if I put my feet on the bottom stand and use the back of my knees to kick the seat backwards, I can sit straight up. And it's a quick movement. I've done it a million times. And so I do that, but I have to use my arms on the top part of the stand to lift my butt up while I do all this. And when I do that, I hear, the best way I can explain it is like a, it's just a weird like sound, but it wasn't loud, but it was kind of loud. And a tree about 40 yards to my right falls, and it falls fast. Like, it doesn't, like, if a tree falls, even if you cut a tree, the first 3 or 4 to 5 seconds is, crack, crack, pop, crack, crack. And then when it gets, about a quarter of the way fell, then it falls. Well, this one it fell. Like, no, there was no snap, crack, pop. There was just, bam, it's on the ground. So, of course, I jump over, look, and I'm like, what the crap? Because this tree fell the same direction that I'm facing. So if I would have been in that tree, I would have hit the ground with the tree on my back. And, I can't see the bottom of the tree because there's trees in between me and that tree. But, for me to see the bottom of that tree, I would have had to been 10 to 15 foot in front of me and looking way over my right shoulder. And so first thing I do when this tree hits the ground, I look at the tree I'm in, just thinking, what the crap, making sure that, that the tree I'm in's a good, healthy tree, which the one on the ground has green leaves on it, and it looks like there's nothing wrong with it. And so I'm just kind of freaked out, like, why did there's no wind blowing, there's no, and this, for a tree like this to fall, you got to have, like a tornado. We have tornadoes down here really bad all the time. And if it didn't fall back in November when we had tornadoes, then, why is it falling now when there's no wind? So I sat there and I decided to stay and hunt. Trees fall all the time. Maybe it maybe it didn't scare the deer off. I sat there and just kept deer hunting. Well, got about 9:30. I climbed down. And I decided, I was like, I'm going to walk over here and just look at this tree. So I walk over. The root ball and everything gets pulled completely. When it fell, it pulled the root ball and everything out of the ground. And it's only an 8 to 10 inch round tree, which is, a pretty decent sized tree. It's probably 25 foot tall. It's an oak tree, and it's healthy. There's nothing wrong with this tree, but it's been pulled out of the ground, knocked over, And I'm just, at this time, I'm not thinking Sasquatch. I'm just, for some odd, weird reason, for all I know, that old man come down here and, mess with the tree. That way it would fall over or something to, scare me off his land or something. He gave me permission to hunt it. Who knows, And so I didn't look for footprints. I didn't look for anything like that because I wasn't thinking Sasquatch. So I walk back over. I get to the stand. I take the stand off the tree. I put my backpack and everything on the stand. I start walking back to the four-wheeler. Well, I get back up behind the house there, and the old man's sitting on the back porch, and he says, "Hey, boy, what was that loud noise this morning?" And I said, "A tree fell." And he just kind of, he just had that grin on his face, kind of, a crap-eating grin. And he just kind of laughed and said, "A tree fell." And I said, "Yeah." And he just kind of shook his head and just sat there. And I threw my hand up. He threw his hand up, and I went on, got on the four-wheeler, and left. And I don't know, it was 2-3 weeks later, he called me, and he said, "Hey, you gonna come hunting over here anymore?" And I told him, "I don't know. I don't know." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't like the fact that tree fell when there was no reason for that tree to fall, and it just kind of weirded me out." Well, he just kind of laughed and hung up the phone. So at that time, I was just, like, whatever, old man, I'm not worried about you and your land anyways. I got my own land to hunt. But, now thinking back, it kind of makes me wonder, why nobody had been in those woods for 50 years. Yeah, definitely. He could have known something,
Yeah, it makes you wonder. And let me ask you, after what you saw that first time, what made you go back and hunt? Was it just disbelief on what you saw, or what was the reasoning for going, I'm going to go out and give this another go? Was it because you were in a different area? And I ask hunters this a lot of times, and, it makes sense what they're saying, but, he saw Andre the Giant, step out and look at you. What was kind of your mindset with wanting to go back?
But like you said, I really, you say something to a few people and they laugh at you, ridicule you, and you just kind of, after, a couple of months of that happening, you just you lock it away in a vault and say, that didn't happen. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to think about it, and you just suppress it. And then, come the next, I've hunted my whole life. When I was 7 years old, my grandpa handed me a 12-gauge shotgun and a couple boxes of shells and said, "Have at it." And that's what I did every day. I went outside and I killed squirrels, and my grandma would cook them, make squirrel dumplings, and, I killed, anything and everything I could find, really. And so, I wasn't going to let that, change me hunting at that time.
I get it, and I respect your answer, and I think a lot of hunters kind of go with that. I think that's kind of the same mentality. Sometimes I'll have hunters on the show, and they'll have very aggressive encounters, and then I think it was a couple of member shows back, and the guy kept going back. But I guess if you're a hunter, it's hard to understand that. If you don't hunt, it sounds crazy, but being that I hunted, I get completely what you're saying. And I think that's why I said before, a lot of hunters go, well, I never seen Bigfoot, but I saw a strange bear. Because I think they try and rationalize in their head because they don't want, to have hunting being taken away from them.
Exactly.
So I get it. I get completely what you mean. But so you kept going back, and there was other things that happened to you, correct?
Yeah, I got a divorce and had to move to a bigger city about 45 minutes away, and which it was the best thing to do for the kids. There's better schools, better opportunities for the kids, and even better for my company. And so we moved, and so I no longer had my property that I could hunt anymore. But there's 40,000 acres of public land that, as long as you have the right kind of licenses, anybody can hunt it. This land it's shut down and locked up from the end of April until the second week of September. So nobody's on it during that time except for the Forestry Service and those people. And and there's not very many of those in this part of Alabama. So this land's kind of, I guess you could say that it would be prime Sasquatch territory because it's 40,000 acres. There's not, it's mountains and, lakes and the Tennessee River. And this would have been 2017, it had to be. Because 2016, I bulged 2 discs in my back, and I didn't get to hunt at all that year. But 2017, I'm sitting in a tree on the side of this mountain, and I've hunted this same spot or this side of this mountain for 3 or 4 years since I moved down to that city, and and I'd hunted it a bunch before that too. But never had anything really go on. But this day I'm sitting there, and I'm hardly ever, most of the time you get together with your hunting buddies and y'all go hunting. Well, this is another one of those instances where I'm by myself.
By yourself, yeah.
And, I'm about 120 yards from the top of the mountain. So I've climbed a long ways up here, and I get up in the tree, and I'm sitting there, and this is an evening hunt. So I got in the tree about 2:00, and here in Alabama, in the wintertime, it starts getting dark around 4:30, and by 5, when you're in the woods at 4:30, you have to have a light to walk out of the woods, and by 5:00, it's pitch black no matter where you are. So about 2:00, I'm sitting here in the tree stand. I'm surveying the land, looking. I can see where I'm at in this stand. I can see 250 yards, and so I've got a pretty good vantage point here. I hear what sounds like a bulldozer coming through the woods behind me. And so I jump up, I turn around, and I'm trying to look and see what this is. And what I'm thinking, it's a buck chasing a doe, and he's coming through the woods. He don't care how much noise he makes. He's chasing this doe. He's waiting on her to stop. And, my heart's racing. I'm just waiting on her to come out so that he'll come out behind her. And it's coming through the woods, and then it stops and gets quiet. And it's quiet for a minute or two, and then it takes off again. And it's moving from the right to the left about probably, I would say, around, if you're looking at the clock and I'm looking at 12:00, he's at 1:30 when I first hear him. And it's moving, pretty quick through the brush, the trees. It's probably 75 to 100 yards behind me, which behind the stand, it's fairly thick. And so, that way when I'm sitting in my stand looking down the mountain, I don't really have to worry about watching behind me because I can't really see more than probably 20 yards. But out in front of me, like I said, I could see 200, 250 yards. I could almost see the bottom of the mountain. And I'm watching behind me, just staring up, trying to, spot this deer. And like I said, it got quiet for maybe 2 minutes, and then it would move again. And when it's moving, it's only moving 20 yards at a time. So it's not covering a lot of ground. This time it's a little closer, but it's still moving to the left. And I can see small trees moving. And I'm like, daggone, man, this thing's huge. This is a big old buck. And I'm getting excited. Like I said, my heart's racing. I'm getting buck fever. I'm starting to shake all over. I'm ready for this deer to come out, And then it'd be quiet for a minute or two. And then it moves again. Now it's about 12:00 in front of me. And the whole, and every time it moves, it's just, it sounds like a freaking bulldozer. And it sounds like it's tearing the trees apart. And it keeps going, and it does this over and over and over. This goes on for 10 to 12 minutes. This thing just tearing the woods up, stopping, tearing the woods up, stopping. And, I'm still, I haven't shouldered the gun yet just because I haven't seen the deer yet. The last place I see a tree shake and it goes quiet is right beside this old dead oak tree. And it's quiet for a second. And I'm just sitting here and I'm like, dadgummit, if this thing don't turn and come my way, it's going to go down in this draw and I'm never going to get to see it. And, I'm going to miss this deer. It sounds huge. I've never heard one come through the woods like this. And so now I'm kind of getting, my adrenaline rush is going away. I'm getting down and out. And then all of a sudden, I hear the bark get tore off of this tree. Have you ever heard, what it sounds like when the bark is just ripped off of a tree?
Yeah, kind of that shredding sound.
Yeah. It's loud, and it's just, it's crazy sounding, and it's not just the one time. It just starts ripping this bark off the tree, and it's just like it's going circles around the tree, just ripping the bark off. And in this part of Alabama, we don't have bears, we don't have mountain lions, so they say. We don't have anything that has claws or hands. You know what I mean? Like that could rip bark off of trees.
Yeah, wouldn't make any sense hearing it. Yeah, no, I understand.
And this happens for 5 minutes. It just tearing just continuously, just ripping bark off this tree. And at this time, I'm puzzled. I can't figure it. I don't have any logical explanation to why, what's doing this. And then, after about 5 minutes, it just goes quiet. I don't hear it tear through the woods. I don't hear anything. It's just silence. And so I stand there for a little while longer, just, waiting to see what might happen. And then finally, nothing's happened. So I turn around and I sit down for a second. And I'm just like, wow, that was the strangest thing I've ever heard in the woods. So I sit there for a little while longer. And by this time, it's, 2:30, something like that. Like I said, at 4:30, I'm not going to be able to see in the woods without my light. So I start thinking, I don't know what that is. And I don't know where it's at. And I really do not want to be in these woods after the sun goes down because, I'm going to have to turn my light on. And so whatever this is going to know exactly where I'm at. And I have no idea where it's at. So I just made the decision right then. I said, well, that's it. I'm going to the truck. And I've got a good, hours and a half walk to the truck because the way it's set up, you got to park on the side of the road. Then you got to walk across this field, and then you start up the mountain. And, and I'm thinking, I got a long ways to go, so it's time to go, before the sun even starts to set. I get up, climb down the stand, and I just go. I'm not really worried about making noise. I'm not really worried about anything. I'm just going. And because I don't, even if this is a bear, if this is a mountain lion, if it's anything like that, I don't want to be in the woods after dark with it. So, I'm gone. And I get to the truck. I actually drive home. It takes me about 45 minutes to get home. I walk in. My wife, it's not dark yet. She looks at me. She's like, what are you doing home? And I'm like, I don't know. Just, I didn't want to hunt tonight. And she, which is weird because, that's not who I am. Normally if I'm going hunting, I'm not going to be home till 6 or 7 at night because, I love being in the woods. I've been in the woods my whole life. It's not like me to just not go hunting if I have time to go hunting.
Did you ever go back and examine that area where it was ripping apart the bark, or did you figure to leave well enough alone?
No, I never did go up there. I didn't really want to. It's kind of one of those things like, you don't want to see what was actually happening because once again, I don't want to stop hunting. You know what I mean? I would rather just not know and just say, okay, well, whatever that was, I'm still alive. It's still alive. Everybody's happy,
Yeah, I get it. I get what you mean. So did you ever go back to that area? Or I know you probably still hunt today, I'm assuming.
Very, very rarely.
Very rare.
Yeah, it's and I'll explain that with the next encounter. It's I've been there one time since then, and I had a buddy with me, and because I made the decision that like I said, I don't know what that was, but if I'm going back there, I'm gonna have somebody else with me that has they also have a gun, But yeah, only one time, and I had a good buddy of mine with me, which he doesn't know. This is the story about the tree falling and the story about this thing coming through the woods, the bulldozer. You're the only person I've ever told, because after what happened with the first time, I just I didn't tell anybody. The next encounter happened on another piece of property that's also public land. It's a small game hunt where you can only hunt squirrels and rabbits, and and birds and stuff like that. And but for 2 weeks out of the year during bow season, they open it to bow hunters to come in and hunt deer. And I hunted it with a buddy of mine, probably 3 or 4 days, morning and evening, every day this week. And he was a car salesman, and he had to go back to work on the Saturday. So I went by myself. And this place, it's covered in deer. I took my wife out there, and, you'll have 40 deer walk out in front of you, and you just pick which one you want and shoot it. Well, this day, which we had a bad drought that summer, and so this place is a swamp. And if you go there like this time of the year, it's been raining for 2 months nonstop. If you go there this time of the year, you can't even get in it because it's just solid underwater. But that year, this would have been 2018, we had a bad drought. It hardly rained at all, so the swamp was actually dried up. And so that Saturday evening, I had decided that I was going to go further in than we'd ever went before because I could get back there because the water's gone. And so I go in, and it's about, I'd say 3 hours from my truck. That's how far I went back up in there. And I had to cross some creeks. I had to, jump across a couple of big trees that have fell. This is pretty rough trying to get back in there. And, and plus you're in a swamp, so it's not completely dry. Swamp never really completely dries out, so it's real sticky mud. And I finally get to where I can see a good long ways, and I climb up a tree. And like I said, I got a 30-foot rope that attaches to my bow and my backpack. So I climb until that rope starts to tug on my stand, and then I set my stand. I pull up my backpack and my bow, and I screw in my bow hook, I screw in my backpack hook, and I set everything up. And this is right at 2 o'clock. Like I said, it's an evening hunt. I want to get in there at 2 o'clock, and I want to sit until after dark and then climb down, go to the house. As soon as I sit down, I hear, where I'm sitting, I could probably see 100 yards all the way around me. And as soon as I sit down, I start hearing this scream/grunt sound, and it sounds like it's right in front of me, but I can't see what it is, but it's right there somewhere. And it screams, I would say 15 to 20 times. And from the first time it screams until the 4th or 5th time it screams, I am scared. Like I've never been scared in the woods. Never, there's almost not anything that I am scared of, except for this sound. When this thing starts screaming, I immediately start shaking. My heart's pounding. I feel sick to my stomach. I don't know what this is, and I'm scared to death. And the only thing I can think to do is I've got to go. I've got to leave right now. I've got to get my stuff. I got to go. And even, I'm 30 foot up in the tree. I'm 30 foot up. There's nothing, even if there was a bear or a mountain lion and it starts climbing up the tree, all I got to do is shoot it, and, just shoot it off the tree,
Yeah.
But, I don't, I've heard bobcats scream. I've actually had them right under my stand, and scream at me before daylight, and yeah, you almost mess your britches. I've been out there and heard foxes scream, and, but I know what those are. I've heard them my whole life. A fox makes some pretty crazy noises, but this was, I don't know what it was. It wasn't, it wasn't a dog. It wasn't a coyote. It wasn't, this was, I could tell whatever this was, it was big and it was angry. And all I knew was I had to leave right then. I had to get either out of its territory, off of its property. I had to get away. And so I stood up, I grabbed my bow and my backpack, and I dropped them to the ground, which is, a big no-no for a hunter to do. But I dropped them, and I started climbing down. I left the hooks in the tree. They're probably still there today. I started climbing down. Luckily, my stand unhooks very quickly. Most people would say, I left the stand sitting there, but it's the only stand I got, and I love the way it's set up. I love the way I can recline in it and enjoy the woods. I unhooked it as quick as I could. By the time I hit the ground, the thing stopped screaming. And at this point, all I'm thinking is, whatever you are, just give me time to get my stuff, and I'm leaving. I'm gone. Don't come after me. Don't. Well, I throw one side of my, the stand, the way they're set up, you can hook them together, and put bungee straps around them, and then, you can hook your backpack onto them, and then throw it on your back because it has backpack straps, and you can, walk, and it's pretty comfortable. Well, I just threw one on one arm, threw the other on the other arm. I grabbed my backpack, grabbed my bow, and I started going as fast as I could. Like I said, I'm in a swamp. I can't move too quick, but I'm moving as fast as I can. I have mud boots on, which, walking in mud's not or sticky mud, they slip off really easy. I've thought to myself, hey, if you lose your boots, oh well, we don't have time to stop. We're going, we're getting. And so, I get to the truck finally. I just throw everything in the bed of the truck, not worried about anything. I just throw it in there. I jump in the truck, and I go home. Well, once again, I've come home, and it's still daylight outside. It's probably 3 o'clock. Well, probably 3:30. And my wife's like, "What are you doing home?" And I was like, I didn't want to go hunting today. I just didn't feel like hunting. And she's like, "No, what's going on?" And I'm like, I didn't want to hunt. I don't want to hunt today. And I just kind of went, I went in the living room, sit on my couch, sit in the spot where I always sit, and just turn the TV on and watch TV. I didn't want to have to think about anything. I wanted to get that out of my mind, because at this time I'm still afraid. I'm still, shaking. And it's just, I've never heard anything like that in my life. I don't want to see what was making that noise. In the first encounter I had, I wasn't scared of that thing. It wasn't, it was big, but I never felt, I was more weirded out and kind of confused than I was scared. The tree falling, yeah, that just kind of freaked me out, because the tree shouldn't fall unless something makes it fall. And then the bulldozer, coming through the woods, that one kind of scared me, but once again, I was freaked out. This thing, this was fear. This was fear. I've had some pretty paranormal, weird stuff happen to me through my life, and that scared me. But this was a fear that I've never felt that. I've never felt it before, and I haven't felt it since then. And just the way that scream made me feel inside, like it was, and like I said, it sounded like it was in my face, screaming at me, and I could just feel it. And I just today I was thinking about it, as I, trying to relive it so that I could, talk about it. And I don't know, man, it messes with me.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get what you mean, and I'm glad that you are an experienced hunter, because a lot of times people hear foxes and coyotes, like you said, and bobcats. A lot of them make really bizarre coyotes. As you and I were talking earlier, coyotes make some weird noises, man. You would think some of the noises I've heard coyotes make, you're like, what in the world is that? So those noises, and this wasn't anything like that. And obviously it was a powerful scream to get you to pack up and get out of there as quickly as possible. So you feel like the scream was directed at you? It was meant for you?
Yeah, I feel like it watched me climb that tree, and it didn't want me there. And it was, I didn't ever hear anything like the mind speak they talk about and all that. I didn't hear anything, but it was telling me to leave. And I felt that, I felt it saying, leave. You don't belong here, leave. And the way the way I felt, the way I was, shaken and just scared to death, that's, I knew I had to leave.
Yeah, it is terrifying, man, especially when you're by yourself, because you're not quite sure what's going to happen. What are the intentions, and what is this saying, and why is it going off on me? I can kind of see why your hunting game is now hit and miss, especially after these encounters. What do you think that they are? What's kind of your opinion as far as what these things are?
I think I truly believe it's an animal. That it's a flesh and blood animal that lives here, and it's learned to stay as far from humans as it can. Even though sometimes it gets spotted or it does things. Or we venture into its territory, and then it has to say it has to come out and say, hey, it's time to leave. I don't buy into the that it's interdimensional or that it can go through portals or any of that, because if it could do that, then why do we get to see it? If it can do that kind of stuff, then why did that one even scream at me? It could have just left. It could have just vanished or whatever. You know what I mean? Or the one that I seen, or the one that pushed the tree over. Why even push the tree over? If you can just go to a different dimension or just, go somewhere else, then just go. Leave me alone. You don't have to ruin my hunt. Just go. And so I believe that it's an animal, that it's a flesh and blood animal that just lives here, and people, want to say, well, why can't we catch up with it? Well, look back through time. This thing was here before, with the Indians. It coincided with the Indians. They, stayed away from each other and just kind of did their own things. And then the white man shows up and it sees what we did to the Indians, pretty much almost wiped them out. And then we, make them walk through the Trail of Tears, for a couple 100 miles and make them, live on this reservation we gave them. I'm sure that they watched that happen, and so they're just like, hey, we need to stay away from, these lighter skinned people, because, they're not good for us. They're not nice. They're not, they might do us the same way they did the Indians, so that, just like, like Ron Moorhead says, they have a language that they can speak to each other. That could have been passed down generation to generation, stay away from people.
Yeah. No, I understand what you mean. I definitely understand what you mean. You make some good arguments, that's for sure. I wanted to ask you, weren't you telling me your grandmother had a light story?
Yeah.
I know that we talk, that we talk about the lights on the show from time to time, and I'm kind of curious, what did your grandmother tell you about the lights?
Well, my grandmother, her dad, so my great-grandfather was a Cherokee Indian, and the property that I was talking about earlier that I had, he owned 10,000 acres. All of my grandmother's family lived on that 10,000, spread out around the 10,000 acres. And she was telling me they had trails that went through the woods that went to so-and-so's house and aunt and uncle's house, and they had trails through the woods that would go to their houses. Well, she said late at night they would and she had 9 brothers and sisters. There were 10 of them altogether. And she said at night, whenever they would leave, like let's say your aunt and uncle's house, they would start going through the trail, and it's dark. Back they didn't have power. They didn't have they might have had a lantern, but they undoubtedly they didn't have one with them. And she said that these balls of light would come out of the woods, and they would stay kind of in the woods, but they would stay close enough to where they would have light to be able to walk home. And they would never come out of the woods. Like when they got to the edge of the woods and they could see their house, the kids would just run up to the house, and the balls of light would stay in the woods, and then they would just go back off in the woods. And my grandma passed away when I was 14, 15. And this was way before then. I was 7, 8 years old when she was telling me this story. So I didn't ever really ask a lot of questions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just a strange story that she was telling me. But she said that they would do that all the time, that they would, every time they were walking from one house to the other, these balls of light would come out and kind of light the path. And she was telling me one time they were out, and she said they were about the size of a basketball, and they didn't, it wasn't like they were bright and you couldn't look at them. They just gave off enough light that you could follow it, And she said that her older brother decided that he was gonna find out what one of them was. And so one night they're walking through the woods, and they get to the edge of the woods, to where they would normally just run up to the house. And he turns around and jumps on one of them, and he's going to catch it and find out what it is. And she said that it's kind of hard to explain it. She had a hard time explaining it too, but she said that when he jumped on it, it's almost like it sucked him into it, and it was almost like it stretched and deformed, and it kind of went haywire, and then he hits the ground, and then it run off in the woods, or hovered off in the woods, however you want to look at it. And then they just took off running up to the house, and he had what looked like burn marks on his arms and his hands and stuff where he'd grabbed a hold of it. And she said after that they never seen him again. They never came back again.
That's really, really fascinating. Most Native Americans will tell you to stay away from them, but I've actually talked to a few that said that they are spirits and on and on and on. That's fascinating, though, that he jumped on the thing, and that he was actually injured by it.
Yeah.
It's strange, here's your grandmother telling, I'm sure your grandmother was an older woman, and but no one was talking about the balls of light back then, and here she is talking about them. What people see today.
Exactly. Yeah. And this would have been when she was little, so this would have been in the 1920s, 1930s. I always kind of wondered, which him being, I guess, a young boy, we're kind of brave when we're young, and he wanted to find out what it was, and she said that the way when he jumped in it, it was like he disappeared inside it, like it sucked him in. But it was like, it's like I said, it's hard to explain, and I wish I could remember exactly how she explained it, and she said, and all of a sudden he come out and hit the ground on his back, and then it just took off. It's just great. I've heard people talking about it. I've heard people on the show talk about it, and, it's just, I've never seen one, but it's just a very weird, they're just strange. I have no idea what they even could be.
Yeah.
It kind of makes you think that it could have been a spirit, because maybe it was, like if it's, I passed away, like I said, my great-grandfather was a full-blooded Cherokee Indian, maybe it was, it could have been spirits from Cherokee Indians that had passed away, and they were, that's why they were helping the kids light the trail to where they could get back home or something. That kind of makes sense. But at the same time, if that's the thing, then then why we should be seeing them everywhere.
Yeah, the one thing that's fascinating is I did talk to a witness one time that did touch one, and he described very similar to what your grandmother said. He said he had burn marks from it, almost like I'm trying to remember this so long ago. He was talking about how it wasn't like touching a stove, but afterwards he had the injuries of like he touched a hot stove. But he said at the time it wasn't hot. It wasn't, and I could see a kid jumping on it, but I mean an adult, because I've seen the lights and I was like, I'm not getting within 10 feet of that thing. I'll sit and film it and watch it, and I don't know what the hell it is. I'm glad he wasn't seriously injured. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you don't really hunt anymore? You just kind of gave up on, or is it kind of hit and miss?
I've actually told my wife, and I've told my three boys. I said, and then my nephew too. I've told them. I said, look, if y'all want to go, I'll take you. But it's almost like, and the worst part about it is I hunt. I kill deer, squirrels. If we have a hunting season for it, I hunt it and I kill it and we eat it. I'm not. I used to kill 4 or 5 deer a year and we'd eat the meat all year long. And then we live right off the Tennessee River. We fish all the time. We catch the fish. I clean them. We stock the freezer full of wild game. And don't really have to go to the grocery store. But since the past 2 or 3 years, it's just not that I'm just not that into it. I've had too many things happen that just make me I've realized I really don't know what's out there. I'm not the big dog, the big bad hunter anymore. You know what I mean? There's something out there that could get me, and I don't like that.
Yeah, and that's understandable. I think a lot of times with hunters, generally with hunters, and I've said this a million times on the show, but they do get more of an aggression, I think, from these things. You'll hear a lot of fishermen talk about encounters and they're getting hit with rocks and they can't figure out where the rocks are coming from. Or they'll be out in their boat and, they'll be throwing softball size rocks in the water next to the boat. And they kind of do the same thing to hunters. I think it's generally more aggressive with hunters, but it goes to show you too that I think in all those situations, if they really wanted you, they would have grabbed you out of that tree and had their way. And I think a lot of their behavior in those situations, don't get me wrong, my personal opinion is I think you are in danger around these things. But I think most of their behavior is to frighten you, to get you to go, like knocking the tree over, and you definitely hear that sort of behavior of them doing those sorts of things. And I think they just want you gone. They don't want you to be there anymore. If the intention is to get you, you get out of that tree stand, grab your tree stand, your backpack, your bow, you're easy pickings at that point. And the fact that it didn't really go after you makes me think it was more of a territorial, I don't want you here, and I'm going to frighten you to make you leave. And I've heard that scream when I was in Texas. And if what I heard is what you heard, you're right. It is terrifying to hear it. It's powerful. You feel it as much as you hear it. And I can't tell you why I think this, but like when I was in Texas and we experienced a scream, for some reason I was thinking female, or, more of a, it was loud and deep, don't get me wrong, but there was some weird tone to it to where I thought female. But it was pissed. It was pissed and it was screaming at us and it was directed at us.
Yeah. I mean, this, it wasn't, like the Ohio howl or anything, it was just a really short, just loud burst of just, anger. Yeah. It was definitely telling me, hey, you don't belong here, get out of the woods, and so, that's definitely what I did.
Yeah. And that's the thing with the scream. I don't mean to cut you off, but that's the thing with the scream. You're right. It's what I heard in Texas was anger. It wasn't fright. It wasn't fear. It was pissed. But
yeah, I hope that I don't, never have to run into it again. I try not to. Actually, last year I joined a hunting lease, and I actually, a big mountainside and all this stuff, and I didn't hunt it much, but when I did, I stayed in the field, and I stayed, and I feel like I went for saying this, but this is how much of an effect it's had on me. I used to, I'd climb up the side of a mountain to go hunting, and if I'd killed a deer, I'd have had fun getting it out. But, I stayed in the field, 50 yards from the truck. I didn't, and I was facing the woods. I was in a blind. With the road behind me, 50 yards behind me, I'm in the field. There's a little strip of trees behind me, kind of blind, to help with the blind, to camouflage me. And I watched the field. I didn't really go in the woods. Just because, I want to hunt. I love to hunt. I love the whole experience, but at the same time, I really don't want to run into one of these again.
Yeah, I understand that. I had a hunter on, I think it was called the hunting lease, and he was kind of saying the same thing after his experiences. He would, be close to the hunting cabin and, not great areas to hunt, but he still wanted to hunt. I completely get that. My advice would be to get back out there. And can they be dangerous? Yes. Can they be aggressive? Absolutely. Can they kill you? Absolutely. But I think most of the time it's more or less behavior to frighten you, to get you to leave, to get you to, and they do a good job of it. You know what I mean? They do a good job of it. But I would try and get back out there. I say that being very a hypocrite about it, because I understand exactly the way you feel. You don't, it kind of takes that away from me. It takes away the woods being a peaceful place to go clear your head, it strips you of that, or hunting that you love to hunt. But, I would try and slowly get back out there. I think a lot of what you experienced was go away. Not necessarily I'm going to kill you, but just go away, and I think you did the right thing. Just leave. And I tell people, don't push it, just leave.
Yeah. Well, that's part of our human nature. If you're in a battle that you're not going to win, if you walk up on a lion, in Africa, you're going to run. You're not going to face off with it.
Yeah, like these things, man. You're not going to go toe to toe with one of them. You're going to lose. But you have to let me know if you end up getting back out there, man, and if anything else happens to you. And I know you haven't shared this encounter or these encounters very much, and I'm honored you would come on and share them. And thank you again for coming on, and thanks for being a part of the show, man.
Well, yeah, man, I appreciate the opportunity, and I just want to say thank you to you for, I love listening to the encounters. I love listening to people, tell their stories, and I never even knew what podcasts were until my nephew last year, got me to listening, and because he wanted me then, he said, you need to email him and tell him, you could go on the show. And I was like, I ain't doing that, and but here I am doing it. But I just want to say thanks to you for what you do and giving people a way to talk without being ridiculed. It's good it's nice to have that.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Thanks again, man.
All right, thanks.
And that's it for tonight, everyone. Remember, if you've had an encounter, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. Until next time, everyone.
Intoxicating danger I like. Save me from myself, let me drown in my black lake. Let me float away. Save me from myself, let me drown in my black lake. Beauty is a black lake, let me sail away. Beauty is a black lake, let me sail away. Darkness approaching, deep water keeps flowing. It inhales me in the stormy tide. Endless emotion, a dawn thought and motion. An epiphany, bring the shore to life. Save me from myself.